My wife, the CEO, left me jobless after announcing I was just a house husband in front of 500 executives. I grabbed the mic, smiled, and said, "Well, I own 48% of this company too." 10 minutes later, she was escorted off the stage. The board was clapping for me. My wife, who is the CEO of the company we built together, mocked me in front of 500 executives and dismissed my role in the company entirely. I responded calmly on stage by reminding everyone, including her, that I own nearly half the company. 10 minutes later, she was escorted out. The board clapped. Now I'm unsure if our marriage can survive this. She's not the person I married. I mean, it was a joke, Colin. Can't you take a joke? Bianca was staring at me from across the hotel suite, her blazer half off, glass of white wine already in hand. Her tone was tired, not apologetic, like I was a child she had to explain things to. "You said I was just a house husband, Bianca, in front of 500 people. I'm not laughing." She sighed, like I was being dramatic, and turned away to look out over Times Square from the 45th floor window. That was the last private conversation we had before everything changed. But let me back up. I'm Colin. I'm 47, and I live in Stamford, Connecticut. My wife, Bianca, is, or was, the CEO of a mid-sized tech consultancy we built together from scratch called Eltrix Solutions. We started with 5 employees in a shared office space and scaled to over 400, with contracts from Fortune 500s and a presence across 3 states. We were partners. In life, in business, in vision. At least that's what I believed for the better part of 16 years. When we started Eltrix, I handled all the operations and back-end systems. Years of my life went into designing the algorithms and project architecture we still use today. Bianca was the face of the company. She had a sharp sense for branding and connections. She could turn a dead meeting into a signed deal with a single story. I always admired that. She had the sizzle. I had the steel. As we grew, I willingly took a step back from the limelight. Public speaking wasn't my thing. I managed logistics, kept the teams running smoothly, made sure the tech was up to date. When we had our daughter Malin, I took on more of the household responsibilities so Bianca could travel more freely. I was never bitter about that. Our success was shared, and we had built something real. Or so I thought. Over the past couple of years, Bianca began changing. Or maybe it was me finally noticing things that had always been there. The way she laughed louder at other men's jokes. How she began calling me her rock, but only in the way you'd refer to an old piece of furniture you no longer needed. She started throwing around the phrase power couple like a brand identity. But more and more, she seemed to believe she was the one with all the power. It all came to a head at the annual Stakeholder Summit at the Marriott Marquis in Manhattan. Big, glitzy event. Full ballroom, press in the back, LED panels flashing graphs and buzzwords. Bianca was glowing. She wore this sleek crimson suit and did that thing where she holds the mic with one hand while gesturing with the other like a TED speaker. The speech was going well. She was charming, polished. Then the joke started. "And while I'm here running the company," she said, voice lilting with pride, "Colin's at home, making sure the dishes are done. He's our unofficial chief household officer." Laughter. Polite. A few glances in my direction. She didn't stop. "I know people ask if he's still involved in the company, and the answer is no. He's just a house husband now. I let him enjoy his retirement early." It didn't feel like a joke. Not to me. Not with the way she smirked, the way her eyes scanned the room like she'd just scored points. People chuckled again. Awkwardly. A few avoided my gaze. I don't know what came over me, but I stood up and walked toward the stage. I wasn't angry, just clear. There was a second mic on the podium, so I calmly picked it up. "Well," I said, smiling softly, "I'm flattered to be called a house husband, but I'd like to remind everyone here that I also own 48% of this company." Silence. Crisp and absolute. I continued. "I wrote the foundation of Eltrix's software, filed the original patents, registered the company. Every time you reference our analytics engine or client routing system, you're referencing something I built. So while I haven't been in front of the cameras much, I've been here. All along. And the board can confirm, I still have co-ownership. Which means decisions like who leads the company are shared." People turned. Bianca's face had gone pale. Eyes wide. Lips parted like she didn't know what language I was speaking. The head of legal was in the front row. She stood up and nodded at me. Within 10 minutes, Bianca was quietly escorted off the stage by 2 board members and hotel security. No drama. No shouting. Just quiet, professional protocol. People clapped. Not wildly, but it was real. After that day, everything unraveled fast. The board called an emergency session. Bianca was placed on temporary leave while an internal review began. She'd made several recent decisions without the necessary board consultation, including funneling money into a side brand incubator in San Francisco. I hadn't been looped in on any of it. The employees didn't revolt, but you could feel the shift in the office. The staff that used to idolize her now walked on eggshells. At home, she barely spoke to me. We slept in separate rooms. She started staying at hotels for clarity, whatever that meant. Our daughter, Malin, noticed. She asked why mom wasn't around as much. I lied, saying mom was busy helping more people with the company. It hurt. A few weeks later, I was reinstated officially as co-CEO. I didn't want to push her out, but I couldn't let myself be erased either. That's when I found out about Luca. He was our head of brand strategy. Bianca hired him the year before, straight out of a flashy creative firm in L.A. Always wore sneakers with his suits. Sharp dresser, sharper tongue. I didn't like him, but I didn't think much of it. Then I found an email thread and some photos. I won't get into it, but it was clear. It had been going on for at least a year. All that time she had been telling me I wasn't enough. He had been in the background, whispering that she didn't need me. And maybe she didn't, but I sure as hell didn't need them either. I confronted her once, quietly, in the kitchen of our Stanford house. "You're sleeping with Luca," I said. She didn't deny it, just stared at the counter like it had answers she didn't. "I think you already made up your mind," she said softly. I nodded. I did. She moved out the next day. After Bianca left, the house felt impossibly quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't bring peace, just echoes. Malin stayed with me. She didn't ask too many questions. 12 is that age where they know more than they're supposed to, but not quite enough to understand it all. I did my best to keep her days normal. School drop-offs, piano lessons, takeout from her favorite Thai spot. But I knew she missed her mother. She tried not to show it. Work gave me something to focus on, at least. The transition back into a leadership role at Eltrix wasn't seamless. A few department heads clearly had their loyalties. Some saw me as the quiet guy from the background stepping out of line. But over the months, things shifted. I started holding one-on-ones again. I walked the floors, asked questions, listened. I didn't bark orders or try to win popularity contests. I just reminded them of who I was, who I still am. Surprisingly, a lot of them responded. I'd built enough of the company's DNA that people recognized it. We tightened some processes, restructured HR, paused a few wasteful marketing campaigns Bianca had greenlit before her departure. The numbers started improving. But outside of work, the silence was heavier. I kept wondering how long it had been broken. Had I just ignored it? Did I convince myself that loyalty and quiet sacrifice were enough to hold a marriage together? Or was she always going to outgrow me? I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Lamont, an older guy who used to counsel veterans. No soft piano music or tissues offered every 5 minutes. He was practical, asked hard questions. "What do you think you lost, Colin?" he asked during our second session. "My partner," I said. "The version of her that used to look at me like I was the only steady thing in the room." "And do you think she lost something too?" That one stung. Because yeah, I did. She lost someone who would have followed her to hell and back if she'd just acknowledged he was walking beside her. Weeks went by, then months. Bianca officially stepped down from the company board, citing personal reasons. We made the announcement quietly. Press didn't dig too hard. Rumors floated, but nothing concrete. Internally, people got the message. I was staying. She was not. The divorce process began shortly after. We didn't argue. No screaming matches. It was unsettling, actually, how calm it all was. The papers went back and forth through lawyers. We had a prenup, but we also had shared assets. Our home, our daughter, our legacy. Bianca waived most of her stake in the company in exchange for keeping the apartment in Manhattan and some of our investment property in Austin. It was a cold trade. Calculated, but expected. What did surprise me was the note she left on the kitchen table during one of her final visits. Just a small folded piece of paper. In her handwriting, "You were never small. I just got too caught up pretending to be bigger than I was." No signature. Just that. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Malin asked about her mom sometimes. I never spoke ill. I said her mom was working on herself, figuring things out. That was true, I think. Or at least true enough for a 12-year-old who didn't need to carry our weight on her shoulders. I got used to the quiet. Even started to like it. In the mornings, I'd drink my coffee on the back porch, read the news, let the dog, Oscar, a mutt we rescued years ago, wander around the yard. I rediscovered things I forgot I loved. Woodworking, slow drives through the countryside, books without time limits. People in town started recognizing me more, not just as Bianca's husband, but as someone who had actually built something. I got a few speaking invites. I turned most down, but agreed to mentor a startup team from Columbia's business school. Smart kids, full of ideas and caffeine. They reminded me of myself when I still thought success came only from shouting louder and working longer than everyone else. But I knew now it wasn't about that. It was about building something that wouldn't crumble when applause stopped. Something that didn't require headlines to be real. I got a call from Bianca's lawyer one afternoon, asking if I'd be open to a mediated conversation. She wanted to talk about co-parenting more openly, he said. I agreed. Not because I needed to, but because Malin deserved two parents who could be in the same room without bitterness suffocating the air. We met in a neutral office space in White Plains. Bianca walked in 10 minutes late, looking tired but sharp as ever. No red suits this time, just a long gray coat and black slacks. Minimal makeup. Her hair down. She smiled faintly when she saw me, then sat across the table. The lawyer greeted us, then left us to speak privately for a few minutes. "You look well," she said. I nodded. "So do you." There was a long pause. Then she looked me in the eye for the first time in what felt like years. "I didn't mean to humiliate you," she said. "Back then." "But you did," I replied. She nodded. "I know. I thought. I don't know. I thought if I made it look like I didn't need anyone, it would make people respect me more. That it made me stronger." "Did it?" I asked. She shrugged. For a while. Another silence stretched between us. This one wasn't angry. Just tired. "I miss Malin," she finally said. "I want more time with her. Not to compete. Just, I want to be her mom again." I leaned back in my chair. "Then be her mom. Just don't try to fix things through performance." She sees right through that. Bianca gave a weak laugh. "She gets that from you." I smiled, despite everything. We agreed to a new custody schedule that gave her weekends twice a month and extended holidays. Nothing dramatic. Just a start. As she stood to leave, she looked back at me. "I really did love you, Colin. I hope you know that." "I did too," I said. "Maybe we just stopped at different times." She didn't argue. And then she was gone again. After that meeting, something strange happened. Things began to feel almost normal. Not the old normal, the kind where we shared morning coffees and whispered about big dreams before Malin woke up. But a new kind of normal. One where we were co-parents, no longer partners. Where interactions were logistical, brief, and polite. Malin adjusted faster than I expected. She didn't seem surprised when the new schedule took effect. She asked if she could keep a toothbrush at her mom's apartment and if it was okay to bring her favorite blanket over. "Of course," I said. She nodded, quietly thoughtful, like she was figuring out how to stretch herself between two places. The weeks moved forward in quiet rhythm. I started enjoying the gaps of solitude when Malin was at Bianca's. At first, they were hollow. I didn't know what to do with the time. I'd open the fridge 4 times in an hour and forget what I wanted each time. I sat on the porch in silence more than I should have. But eventually, I started doing things again. Real things. I signed up for a woodworking class in New Canaan. Met some retired guys who were happy to let me stand quietly next to them and learn the feel of shaping something with my hands. There was comfort in that. Sawdust felt honest. At Eltrix, I kept things steady. I didn't overhaul the company or rebrand it. I wasn't interested in playing the visionary. I just wanted to run it right. Keep it profitable, grounded, ethical. I brought in a new director of operations, a sharp woman named Silima from a logistics firm in Jersey City. She asked smart questions, challenged me on inefficiencies, and never once made a joke about house husbands. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was in someone else's way. One rainy Thursday, about 8 months after Bianca's exit, I ran into Luca at a networking mixer hosted by a client in Soho. I hadn't expected him to be there. I figured he'd followed Bianca out of the company, or at least into a different industry entirely. He spotted me across the room and hesitated, then made his way over like we were about to exchange golf scores. "Colin," he said, too familiar. "Luca." He gave me a stiff nod. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Likewise." We stood in awkward silence for a beat. Then he added, "Things ended badly. Between her and me. In case you wondered." I didn't reply. I wasn't sure I cared. She got overwhelmed. He continued, clearly trying to justify something. Maybe to me, maybe to himself. She felt like she was disappearing. You know? Like, under all the expectations. The marriage. The company. Everything. "I know," I said flatly. But she didn't have to push me off the cliff to feel taller. That stopped him. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. "Well," he muttered, "for what it's worth, I respected what you built. You were the foundation." Then he was gone, drifting into the crowd of blazers and catered hors d'oeuvres. I let out a long breath and left 30 minutes later. There was nothing there for me. On the train ride back to Stanford, I scrolled through photos on my phone. Not of Bianca or Luca or the company. Just pictures of Malin from the past few months. Her on the beach in Guilford with a kite. Her curled up with Oscar in a graphic novel. Her smiling. The kind of smile that says she's still got both feet on the ground, even if her family isn't under one roof anymore. That night, I stayed up late, cleaning out a few old boxes in the garage. I found our first Eltrix pitch deck, the one Bianca and I used when we were trying to get investors back in 2010. It was awful. Clip art logos, way too many bullet points. But it made me smile. Back then, we were just trying to prove ourselves. To someone. To everyone. To each other. Sometimes I think Bianca and I would have been better off as co-founders who never got married. We were great at building things, just not great at being things together for the long haul. Too many ambitions, not enough humility. Or maybe too many sacrifices left unspoken until resentment did the talking. I didn't burn the deck. I didn't throw it away. I just slid it back into the box and closed the lid. A week later, I was walking Oscar through the neighborhood when I got a text from Bianca. "Hey, Malin's got her science fair this Friday. Want to go together?" I stared at the message for a moment, thumb hovering. "Yeah, let's go together." Maybe we couldn't rewrite the past. But maybe we could still show our daughter that respect wasn't just something you demanded. It was something you rebuilt. one quiet decision at a time. Friday came with one of those sharp spring mornings. Sky clear, air still cool, the kind that made you question if you needed a jacket or not. I stood outside Roosevelt Middle School waiting for Bianca. Malin had gone ahead early with her project, something involving bioluminescent algae in a homemade terrarium. She was so excited she barely slept the night before. I hadn't seen Bianca in person since our last co-parenting meeting. We texted sometimes, mostly about logistics or scheduling. I didn't know how today would go. Standing there on the sidewalk, hands in my coat pockets, I realized how strange it was to feel nervous around someone you used to know so completely. She pulled up in a black SUV, window down. "Hey," she said, giving a little wave. "Morning," I replied, stepping around to the passenger side. "Parking's a mess?" "Always," she muttered with a tired laugh. We walked in together. Not close enough to touch, but not with that awkward distance either. Like colleagues. Or maybe old friends who'd weathered something neither of them fully understood. Inside, the gym had been transformed. Rows of folding tables, poster boards, dioramas, solar system models, and wide-eyed kids explaining scientific miracles with markers and construction paper. Malin spotted us right away. Her face lit up when she saw we'd both come. She waved us over like she was commanding a crowd. "Dad, Mom, look." It glows when the room is dark. Bianca crouched beside the table while Malin flipped off a desk lamp beside her project. The algae jar glowed faintly, an eerie blue-green shimmer, subtle but magical. "This is amazing," Bianca said, genuine awe in her voice. "I helped her figure out the container seal last weekend," I added. Malin nodded. "He used a glue gun and everything. It almost exploded once." "It did not almost explode," I said, laughing. For a brief moment, the three of us stood together, heads tilted toward the little jar, bathed in soft glow, like some kind of metaphor we weren't brave enough to admit. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. We stayed longer than we meant to. Talked to teachers. Took pictures with Malin. Grabbed coffee from the parent volunteers table and leaned against the bleachers like we used to at her kindergarten events. Bianca looked around and said quietly, "I forgot how nice this is." "You used to love this stuff?" I said. "I still do. I just got caught up." I nodded. We both knew what that meant. She wasn't trying to rewrite history, just acknowledging it in small pieces. And I appreciated that. Afterward, she offered to drop me home. The car ride was quiet for the first few minutes. Then she asked a question I hadn't expected. "Do you ever think we could have made it? If things were different?" I stared out the window for a moment before answering. "Yeah, sometimes. But we weren't different." She didn't reply for a bit. I was too proud. I thought I had to prove something to everyone. Especially myself. I didn't see what I was doing to you until I'd already done it. I turned to her. "You didn't just hurt me, Bianca. You erased me. And I let you. For years." She blinked hard, nodding. "I know." We pulled into my driveway, and I didn't move to get out right away. "I don't hate you," I said. "I want you to know that." She smiled softly, sadly. "I don't hate you either." I opened the door and stepped out. We did build something incredible, even if it didn't last. She looked down at the steering wheel, then back at me. Some parts of it did. And just like that, she was gone again. Not forever. Just for now. That night, Malin wanted pizza and a movie. She curled up next to me on the couch, still buzzing from the science fair. Halfway through the movie, she looked up at me and asked, "Were you and Mom happy when I was little?" I paused the film. She didn't ask it accusingly, just curiously, the way kids do when they're finally old enough to ask what they've always felt but didn't understand. "We were," I said. "We had good years. Lots of them." She nodded and leaned her head back on my shoulder. "I remember some of it," she whispered. "That's good," I said. "It's okay to remember the good." We didn't talk about it after that. In the following weeks, Bianca and I found a rhythm. Civil exchanges. Honest updates. A few photos texted here and there. Malin on a hike. Malin's new haircut. A new recipe she made at her mom's. It was like we'd finally stopped keeping score. Like we'd dropped the weight of who was right and who had lost more. I still had hard days. There were nights I woke up thinking she was still beside me, only to find the other half of the bed cold and still. Times when I'd see a photo of her on LinkedIn, giving a keynote somewhere in D.C., and wonder if she ever looked back, if she missed what we had, or just missed the version of herself she was with me. But I didn't dwell. Not like I used to. I filled my time better now. I started volunteering at a local entrepreneurship group that mentors high schoolers. Kids who didn't come from much, who had ideas and fire, but no one to guide them. It felt meaningful in a way even Eltrix sometimes didn't. One Saturday afternoon, I ran into Bianca again, unexpectedly, at a fundraiser for a local community center. We were both surprised to see each other, but not unpleasantly. She was with a colleague. I was alone. We chatted briefly, polite, warm, and unforced. Before she left, she touched my arm gently and said, "You seem lighter these days." "I am," I said. "So do you." She smiled, then turned to go. It had been a little over a year since Bianca left the company, and nearly 8 months since the divorce papers were finalized. Life had found a groove. Not perfect, but quiet in a way I could live with. Then something unexpected landed in my inbox. A message from a major business podcast, American Founders, one of those polished, high-profile shows that dives into startup stories, entrepreneurial drama, and the rise and fall of companies. They were running a series on hidden architects, people who'd been the silent builders behind big-name businesses. They wanted to feature me. At first, I hesitated. The thought of broadcasting everything, especially the darker parts, made me feel exposed. But I thought about all the people like me who were written out of their own stories. The ones who had built quietly, supported endlessly, and were repaid with erasure. So I agreed. The interview was recorded in a studio in Midtown. 2 hours of conversation. I told them about the founding of Eltrix, how it started in a borrowed space with secondhand laptops, how Bianca and I used to work 18-hour days and eat ramen at our desks. I talked about the systems I built, the patents I filed, the sacrifices made when I stepped into a quieter role so the company could grow. I didn't trash Bianca. I never named her directly. I simply told the truth, that I had been sidelined, publicly dismissed, and ultimately had to remind everyone, including her, who had helped build the foundation they were standing on. The episode dropped a month later, and it exploded. Messages poured in, LinkedIn requests, journalists, emails from former employees who had no idea I'd co-authored the code that powered half the company's product, former clients expressing shock that I had been cast into the background for so long. Even Malin's science teacher mentioned it to her at school. But what I didn't expect, what I never saw coming, was what happened next. A week after the episode aired, I was invited to speak at a global tech summit in Boston. Not a panel, the keynote. Apparently, someone on their advisory board had heard the podcast and wanted me to open the event. I accepted. This wasn't about spotlight. It was about reclaiming authorship. The day of the event, I stood backstage behind heavy black curtains, looking out over a massive ballroom filled with thousands of people, investors, founders, executives, students. And in the second row, I saw her. Bianca. She wasn't a speaker. She wasn't on the list. But there she was, sitting with that same stillness I remembered from our early years, back when she was trying to prove herself. Back when we were a team. I took the stage. And I didn't hold back. I spoke about resilience. About how easy it is to lose yourself in someone else's story. How dangerous it is to let ambition eclipse the truth. How power doesn't just corrupt, it sometimes deceives, convincing you that your partners are stepping stones, not scaffolding. And how reclaiming your worth doesn't always mean revenge. It means reminding the world that you were always there. I could feel her eyes on me the entire time. But I didn't flinch. I didn't stumble. The applause at the end was loud. Not just polite. Earnest. Afterward, there was a line of people waiting to speak to me. I shook hands, smiled, answered questions. I never once glanced toward her. She waited until the crowd died down to approach. No camera crews. No public stage. Just her and me in a quiet hallway behind the ballroom. That was powerful, she said softly. Thanks. You didn't name me. You could have. I didn't need to. She nodded. You're not angry anymore, are you? No, I said. Because I won. She blinked. What do you mean? I looked her in the eye. You thought taking the spotlight meant you were the story. But stories outlive the spotlight. And now the story, the truth, is out there. Not because I yelled, but because I waited. She didn't argue. She didn't apologize. She just looked small. Not in a cruel way. Just in the way people look when they realize the pedestal they climbed was resting on someone else's shoulders the entire time. I've been trying to start another company, she said. It's been hard. Maybe don't forget your co-founder this time. I said, calm as a glass of water. She gave a quiet laugh. Yeah, lesson learned. We shook hands, and she walked away. No rage. No begging. No bitterness. Just closure. Later that night, back in my hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked out the window at the Boston skyline. I felt light. Not in the way people describe after some dramatic vindication, but like something had settled. Something had aligned. I texted Malin a photo of the ballroom, told her I'd be home in the morning. She sent back, so proud of you, Dad. The best revenge, I realized, wasn't taking anything from Bianca. It was taking everything she tried to strip from me, my voice, my dignity, my legacy, and giving it back to myself. Silently, completely, permanently.